high school student in Maryland is getting a lot of negative attention after he put out a 30-second video where he talks about how he does not believe that Black Lives Matter. Now, I'm not going to identify this kid. He's obviously in a lot of trouble, but I'm going to tell you exactly what his 30-second video said. So the 30-second video shows a student at Mount Hebron High School in Ellicott City saying, "Who the fuck cares about some black man who dies?" The student goes on to say that black lives do not matter because they are an inferior race, okay? So keep in mind, this is a high school student, okay? This is not some elderly person who's thinking about, you know, the civil rights era and how much he loves segregation. This is a kid. Let me continue. The video ends with the student grabbing a $5 bill and holding it up to the camera to display the face of President Abraham Lincoln. He then goes on to say, "This guy is a traitor to the white race." So the response was swift, and administrators are now trying to deal with it, try to figure out what the problem is. But apparently this particular area of Maryland has been dealing with racist attitudes for quite some time. An area of the school where black students often congregate in between classes is referred to as the jungle. The students said it was not out of the ordinary to hear white students say racial epithets such as the N-word in the hallways.
So I think the upside of social media is this stuff comes to light. So now the kid is profusely apologizing, the tough guy who was talking about how Lincoln's a traitor to the white race and all. And he doesn't want to get, you know, suspended, expelled, whatever it might possibly happen to him. But once you bring it out in the light, I think even some of the people who do have those attitudes, and remember they're kids, so it's not like it's set in stone. It's not like it can't change. They begin to have a conversation, and at some point, hopefully, an adult tells them, "Now, how do you think that makes your classmate feel? You know, how would you like it if he said that about you?" I hope that conversation happens, and I think it does. And so I think we get a little bit better from that. What's really depressing is what's happening when the light is not on. And so to this day, I still can't believe it. I grew up in New Jersey in a very mixed neighborhood, right? And lots of immigrants, Christians, Jews, Muslims, Russians, Indians, Koreans, blacks, whites, etc. And so we really, to the best of my knowledge, didn't have this, right? Mm-hmm. I can't believe that in 2015 they're still calling places the jungle and this and so that's why we got to put a light on it. And so I don't need like vengeance against this kid. He's a kid. I mean, yeah. It feels weird to like gang up on him, and even though what he said is super vile and disgusting, right, and intimidates the other kids that are at that school. I just want to learn from it. And get better.
Look, I think about who I was in high school, and I was very different from who I am today. I didn't put out videos with vile material like this, but, you know, I had very conservative views when it came to gay marriage or prostitution or drug legalization, and you grow and you learn and you change. And I think that that's possible with this kid. But obviously, it's not just an isolated incident. There's an issue with this area, and administrators seem to be warranting some of this behavior by not punishing students when they yell the N-word in hallways or when they refer to an area where the black students hang out as the jungle. So the adults need to reform their own behavior so these kids understand that this kind of behavior is unacceptable.
Yes, I mean, and hopefully this school board will be able to suspend Donald Trump. The point is, so that's the problem. We're living in a country where half the country is A-okay with this kind of stuff, right? And so I wanted to ask you a question. You said you grew up in New Jersey and it was a mixed neighborhood and you didn't see any of this stuff. Now, maybe you didn't see any of this stuff because you were a tough kid with dark skin and Muslim parents, and maybe people are going to say shit to you, right?
They did in the beginning.
Oh,
they did not at that.
Oh, right. So this stuff did exist in that neighborhood.
No. But again, it was so innocent. Like when I first came here, I was 8 years old, and the kids is, "Oh, where are you from? Turkey. Oh, gobble gobble. Do you eat your family at Thanksgiving?" They don't mean any harm by that. They're kids, right? And so I'd kick their ass. No, seriously. I lived in such an idyllic place. No, nobody cared that we were Muslim. Nobody cared. Like, it never came up.
But I'm saying you don't know. I'm sure there was a lot of, maybe not back then, people didn't care. They would care now.
Well, first of all, a couple of things, you know, based on the other friends I have from Jersey. I mean, it apparently is some racial oasis, parts of Jersey, certainly not all of it, but because my other friends too. I mean, I other friends from Jersey. They're like, no, I had black friends, I had Indian friends. It is one of those rare places where, at least during the '80s and the '90s, the melting pot thing worked.
Yeah.
Fairly well in a lot of parts of Jersey. I don't know why, but it did. I'm sure there are other places where it did work. But obviously, you're right because you experienced it in Illinois.
Well, also traveling around, like, so as a stand-up comedian for 20 years, I traveled the country, and it's just everywhere. There's nowhere,
That's right.
I'm from the north, Chicago. lots of racism. I mean, they would have the Nazis would march through Skokie against the Jews, right? And then when Martin Luther King came to my neighborhood, they threw bottles at him and stuff, and he was surprised that this is happening in a northern city, and it's not just in the South, it's everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, and as a TV reporter, and I got exposed to a ton of it.
Right.
A lot of South
Surprising,
Carolina,
right?
but also, you travel and you get it. So no, it doesn't surprise. This is about 14 miles from Baltimore. I've been to Ellicott City, because it's near D.C. And so no, I'm not surprised by it. What the part that again sickens me is that he made it, and there was it got passed around like there's no it took a while for somebody to go, Larry, Jesus, what is wrong with you?
Right.
And to say no, obviously, and the administrators looking the other way with knowing that full well, hey, we got a problem. The black kids all meet here. First of all, it's a problem that the black kids all hang out together. That's a problem at a zillion schools. I mean, that they're not comfortable, that the school's not integrated enough. That's a problem in a lot of places.
That was a problem at Cal State Northridge in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Where all the students, there are cliques.
Yeah,
and
totally.
everyone sticks to one another. Like if you're Armenian, you hang out with the Armenians. You're black, you hang out with the black students. It needs to be more integrated. But how do you do that?
That's hard, and that's an issue. But that said, if the black kids all hang out somewhere and you're a school administrator, your ears got to be awake. They call it the jungle. You got to stop that. You got to make sure, because that's scary, And same thing for me up in I go to college in Boston. I go to Tufts, which is right next to Harvard, and it's like 2 subway stops. It's basically the same school.
And Tufts is the Harvard of Tufts.
That's right. It's the Harvard of Medford. And the great thing about Boston is it's this sort of home of northern liberalism in many ways. And then you're in Medford, Massachusetts, and much of Medford was indistinguishable from. I went to school in Tufts is half in Medford, half in Somerville. There's a Somerville, South Carolina, and in many ways indistinguishable. You'd go down to South Carolina and just hideous racism in parts of Boston, not just South Boston.
Also in Boston, though, there was the busing thing, which kind of infused racism into a community that wasn't there before.
That's right, shot it into it.
Yeah. So that's all. I'll say one thing. My first paid gig where I had to fly, the first time I got flown to do comedy I had to go to New Orleans. And I was excited. I'm flying to the gig, and I also was a big jazz fan. And I was like, I didn't expect there to be racism there because of jazz, right? Jazz came to New Orleans, and jazz and black
music brings people together.
I just did not expect. And man, it was all over I remember I was in a cab, and he was driving me back to my hotel one night, and we went past a black nightclub, and there's maybe 50 or 100 black people standing out in front. And he goes, "Boy, it'd be a good place to have a machine gun." And I'm like, "You don't even know me. What do you talk? What?" Right. Like he just assumes I'm racist with him,
2 cab drivers to me happened twice, unbelievably years apart in St. Louis. Cab drivers in St. Louis both used the N-word on a cab ride. The second time, I could not believe that it had just happened again.
You know what you guys should say? Yeah. That's interesting. My wife is black. Right, which, by the way, yours was.
At the time, that's right.
Right. So, anyway, just to make it awkward for him.
Yeah.
Okay, now, look, I don't want to paint Jersey as heaven. There was terrible parts of Jersey, of course, and terrible places, too, in terms of racism. And the reason I bring that up now is because, like, in places like Asbury Park and Neptune, when black families started moving into the neighborhoods, there was white flight. And so a lot of this already existed, but it got exacerbated by things that meant to actually make it better, whether it was affirmative action, busing, etc. But a lot of white people also in the North felt besieged. Wait, you're taking my job or my son's job and giving it to his son, and now I hate him. right? Or you're moving them into my school or my neighborhood and my property values drop. That was the idea, right? And oftentimes because of that psychology, it actually did happen, right? So they're like, oh my God, I spent my whole life building a value in this house and now it's not worth as much. And that made people angry. So these things are real. It doesn't justify any of this. The reason I want to lay all that stuff out is to say it's not that people are intrinsically horrible people, right? There are circumstances that lead to certain situations, but once we know them, we can hopefully get past them. And the fact that we're in 2015 and haven't come anywhere near getting past them is really problematic, because to me in this story, again, kids are stupid. They do stupid stuff. I did stupid stuff when I was a kid. And I'm with you. When I was growing up, we said all sorts of terrible things about gay people. We had no idea, right? But I'm worried about the parents and I'm worried about the community. When the Abraham Lincoln thing bothered me because, you know, a kid might use the N-word because he heard it in a rap song and that's super standard. It's not a good thing, but it happens all over the place. It's a different thing to get into Lincoln and call him a race traitor.
Right, you've thought it out. You've thought it out.
Yeah, and usually you heard that from somebody.
Yeah.
Right? And you heard it in a community that was welcoming of that kind of talk.
And the thing you heard was, I wish he hadn't freed the slaves.
Yeah, because why else are you having that conversation?
How else are you a race trader, right?